This is going to be a full guide on how you can mix your beats in 2024. Since you guys have been spamming me in the comments about mixing, and more mixing. So today I'm going to show you guys exactly that. Now I just want to preference that this is the way I personally mix. There is technically no right or wrong way to do it, but you guys have obviously been liking the sound of my mixes. So today I'm going to show you guys exactly that. So we are going to break down everything from the melody to the drums and then even some arrangement mixing later on. So I'm going to cover everything in this video. So let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump right in. Alright, so we're now here in FL Studio 21, and the first thing we want to do is obviously start off by mixing our melody. Now having a clean sounding melody is seriously crucial, because if you're just having a super muddy and unclean sounding melody, then you can add some drums later on, but it's still not going to sound that good since your melody is all over the place, even if you have mixed your drums very nicely. So like I said, it's seriously important to have a clean sounding melody. So in this case, I'm actually just going to go over to my motion bundle kit over here. Since I have a lot of different samples in here, I'm actually going to pick a sample from here, but don't worry, the mixing process is pretty much the same if you're making a melody from scratch or if you're using a sample. So I'm going to cover everything in this one, but I'm going to look through a couple of the samples first and see which one I like the best. I think I'm going to go with this one. So let's just first drag this one in right here. And then the BPM is 180, so we're also going to bump this up to 180 so it fits the tempo. Now, if you guys look at my samples, you can see that I actually have all the stems laid out towards the end of the sample right here. And I've actually even marked them, so it's very easy to just chop them up in the right place. So what I highly recommend is, if you have the stems of your sample, make sure to just cut up the stems and arrange them properly. So what I'm going to do is just cut up every single one right here. You can do the same if you have them. If you don't have the stems, you're just going to have to work with the sample as it is. But since we have the stems, I'm just going to mute the top melody right there and just drag all the stems underneath each other, so we kind of have them all laid out in a nice little way. Right, so now that I have all the stems laid out properly like this, what I highly recommend you guys do is just go into each and every stem and just make sure to make it unique, so you can kind of actually arrange them properly in the mixer channel right here as well. So the way I like doing it is just by clicking the top left button right there, and then you're just going to make every single one of these unique, so you can easily just arrange them in the mixer. Alright, so now that we have made all of them unique, you can see that you actually have a lot more audio files in here. So what I'm going to do is just highlight all of these ones right here, since those are the individual stems. And we're just going to go over to the mixer channel, hit the first insert, and then just hit Control, Shift, and L on your keyboard. As you can see, it's going to assign every single one of the stems that we laid out earlier inside of our mixer right here. Now from here, I'm just going to rename everything just for organization purposes. Obviously, you don't need to do this if you don't want to, but just to keep everything neat and simple, I'm just going to rename it so it's easier to see what is what. Alright, so now we have everything renamed and color organized, as you guys can see. So if you go over here and just play our main melody, you can see it's all coming in here. And it's individually stemmed as well, so it's going to be very easily to mix. Alright, so now that we have everything organized, it's time to actually do the mixing process. Now, like I said, we want to make sure that our melody is sounding super clean. Now, since I have obviously made this sample from scratch myself, I have done a lot of the mixing beforehand, but you guys can maybe hear that it's a little bit too loud. But in my opinion, the sample is a little bit too loud. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just highlight all of these right here, and I'm actually going to route them to a single mixer track, so it's a little bit easier to manipulate the volume. So we just highlighted everything, and then I'm going to go down to the arrow, right click it, and then route to this track only. If I play the sample right now, you're gonna see it's gonna be all playing in this one. So this is basically like having the whole melody in one channel, as well as having them all individually tracked. So since it's a little bit too loud, I'm gonna lower it a little bit more. So it's around somewhere between 12 and 9 dB. That is just a reference point. You don't have to do the same exact thing, but that is somewhere I like to have the melody. So from here, we want to go into each individual stem that we feel like needs a little bit cleanup. So in my opinion, the guitar and maybe the vocal needs a little bit of EQ. So I'm going to start off with the guitar first. We can just solo it to begin with. And we're just going to go in and add a little bit of an EQ. Now you can see we don't really want too much of the low end right there. We don't really have too much low end going on either, but I feel like it's a bit boxy right here in the 300 frequencies, so I'm going to lower those. And then I'm also going to boost it up a little bit in the higher frequencies so we get a little bit more of that treble. Yeah, now I think it sounds way better. It's a little bit cleaner and it has a more enhanced sound as well. Next was the vocal. It's a little bit harsh right here. So let's just EQ that down a little bit. There's a bit of white noise right here, which we don't really need. It's just gonna make things muddy, so I'm gonna remove that. Same thing with the higher pitched vocal. I'm gonna go over to the same EQ from the previous vocal. Just hold on File and drag in the Save Mixer preset over to the higher pitched vocal as well. I'm just gonna adjust this so it is a little bit better. Nice. Right, so now we have the whole melody with the EQ is on. So it's a little bit cleaner. This riser can also go down a little bit. And then from here, once you have really cleaned up your sound, now is when you should add the reverb or either the EQ and stuff like that. Because you don't want the ugly frequencies to also be layered with the reverb. That's just gonna sound very off. So once you have a super clean sound, you can then add the reverb and then you can even clean it up even more after that if you want to. But in this case, I really like how the melody sounds. The last thing I wanna do is just spread out the sound a little bit. So it's not so in mono, we can just go over to our last insert right here where we have everything combined into one insert. So if we rename this, I'm just gonna rename it to full melody. And from here, I'm just gonna widen out the sound a bit. So the way we're gonna do this is just by opening up an imager. I'm using the Ozone 9 imager, and then we can just go down here for mono and up here for stereo separation, right? So what we wanna do is just start off this with 0, and then we're gonna play. And I'm just gonna spread it out a bit more. Not too much, but about 35 should be good. You can even see the visual right here. Yeah, so you have it way more spread out right now. Now, one more cool trick I've seen a lot of guys doing when it comes to the bass is actually just adding an imager yet again on the bass. But to make it a little bit cleaner, we're actually gonna go over here to 100 Hertz, and then we're just gonna press it so we kind of have a section which is under 100 Hertz, and we have a section which is above, right? So this first section is what is below 100, and we're actually gonna go to -100, so everything is in mono under 100 Hertz on the bass. Take a listen to how it sounds. Just gives the bass a little bit of a cleaner sound as well, and it separates it from the main melody. Alright, so from here we're just gonna arrange the melody a little bit so we can kind of build up to the drums. Right, so I just did a quick little arrangement right here, so we kind of have a little bit of an intro right here, and then our bass comes in towards the second part of the intro. So this is kind of a pre-chorus. Then we have the main chorus or the hook right here, and these 16 bars where we're gonna have our drums and everything. And then after that comes the rest. But the reason why I did this is because I want to show you guys a very, very important thing when it comes to mixing the melody, and that is obviously removing the low end, but make sure to actually automate it as well. So what I mean by this is that we're gonna go over to the mixer yet again, go over to the full melody where we have everything, and then we're gonna add a EQ. Now this is crucial to do because you want to make sure that when you add your 808 later on, you don't have a lot of muddiness down on the low end, right? So if we just start playing this, you can already see we don't have a lot of low end on the melody, but I like removing everything from like 200 to 150 and below. So in this case, I'm going to remove something like 150. We're going to remove that down. So you can see everything from 161 right here and down is kind of going to be removed. But the reason why I'm doing this on the full melody insert and not on every single one of these is because we can actually automate this on and off. Since we have a bass in the melody, we don't want to kind of remove that all the time throughout the whole melody. So what we're going to do is just go over to the EQ right here, turn it completely off, right click it, and then hit create automation clip. Once we've done this, you can see that we have an automation clip right here. And what I'm going to do is just keep it off on these first two 16 bars right there. And then what I'm going to do is just actually going to keep them on right here when the drums would come in. The reason for this is because we don't want the melody to have like no feeling to it right in the beginning. We actually want a little bit of that natural low end we have from the melody to be in the intro. Then when our drums actually come in, that's when we're going to remove the low end, since that's when the 808 is going to come in, and we don't want those sounds to actually clash. All right, so that's pretty much it for the melody. melody. Now it's time to add some drums. So we're just gonna put down a pattern right here on the hook, just so we can kind of get a feeling for the drums. Now, before we actually add any of the drum sounds, I just want to preference that it's super important to have clean sounding drum sounds right out of the folder. Now, the reason why this is so crucial is because you first of all don't want to waste a lot of time by mixing and adjusting all your drum sounds one by one. You want to make sure to have a clean sound right out of the gate. And secondly, you can't really just save the sound of the beat by mixing the whole thing. If you're using bad sounds to start off with, you can't outmix bad sounds, right? So you kind of have to have good sounds and then clean them up and mix them if you want to, but they really need to be clean sounds to start off with, unless your whole thing is just going to sound completely off. So if you guys don't have any clean drum sounds, I personally use all my drum sounds from the Motion Bundle kit. It is my own kit with clean drum sounds right out of the folder. You have over 200 plus drum sounds you can use, and since the kit is a bundle, you'll even get a MIDI kit, a sample pack, and also a one-shot kit with clean sounding one-shots. So if any of that sounds interesting, I'm currently having a sale on the kit. You can find it on the first link down below, or you can just go on my website, which is BBMarko.com. Regardless of that, just make sure that you're using some clean drum sounds. Okay, so let's just start by adding those claps in. And already I'm gonna do a very essential trick. And the trick is really to just highlight everything, and you want to make sure to up the velocity right there. So you can see naturally it just goes in a little bit in the middle. I'm going to highlight it all and just hold Alt on my keyboard while scrolling up the mouse wheel. I'm just going to punch them right up to the top. You can see they're way more present already just by putting up the velocity. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit too harsh, so I personally mix my drums while I add them. So what I mean by this is that I'm just gonna add them in right here, and then inside of the channel rack, I'm going over to this volume knob and I'm just turning it down a little bit while I'm making the whole beat. So I feel like this is nice, it's present, but it's a bit too harsh. So what I'm gonna do is just go over to the knob and lower it down just a slight bit. Yeah, so now it's way better. As you guys can see, we just removed it down to a little bit, not too much, but just a tiny bit on that knob, and it's perfect. Next, we're gonna add some hi-hats. I'm gonna go over to the hi-hat section, make sure to pick again clean sounding hi-hat. Now with the hi-hat, if you don't really like the sound of it, I highly recommend sometimes going into it and just turning up the out knob a little bit, just so you can get a little bit of a different sound from your usual hi-hat. Now for the pattern, obviously I'm just gonna go over to the MIDI kit. We have 100 hi-hat MIDIs in here, so I'm just gonna drag in one that fits nicely with the beat. Okay, so we're just gonna go with something simple right here, just so we don't overdo it for this example. Clean and fast-paced hi-hat right here. Again, I'm going into the knob while I'm listening to the beat and just adjusting the volume. Next, we're going in with the snare. Just copy that over for the second part as well. In here as well, if you have kind of a consecutive snare pattern, I also like going in and just adjusting a little bit of the velocity on the second one. Just gives it a little bit of an extra groove and also adds to the mix. Yeah, that's clean. You can already hear how clean it is. Just a little bit of a rim, again fading the velocity, just for a better and clean mix. Like I said, remember to adjust the volume while you are doing it. It's gonna make it a lot easier. I know somebody else just likes to put everything in first and then adjust the levels, but I personally just feel like I get a better understanding of the mix when I adjust the levels while making the beat. Alright, now that we have pretty much the essentials, I think it's time we add both the kick and the 808. A lot of you guys are asking how I do the kick and the 808, and it's actually pretty simple. You don't need to worry about any sidechaining or anything like that. We're just gonna use two clean sounds and then layer them correctly. So let me just explain it to you guys. If you go over to the 808 section and the kick section right here in the kit, you can see we have a lot of different sounds. Now I'm going to give you guys an example of what works and what usually doesn't work. So if we go over to an 808 like this one, you can hear it's a very high pitched type of 808. You have a lot of high frequencies inside of that 808 as well as those low frequencies. You have a lot of higher frequencies as well as those low 808 frequencies. So if you were to layer this with a, let's say, high pitched kick, it's not really going to sound that good since you're going to have those frequencies clash. So something like a kick like this and a 808 like this wouldn't really go that well together, since like I said, they are using the same type of frequencies. But let's say if you are using a more of a low end type of 808 like this one, you can hear it has a lot of those low end frequencies, not really too much on the high end. Then if you were to add a kick like this one, which is pretty punchy and has a lot of stuff on the high end as well, it's going to combine perfectly since the frequencies don't really clash that. And remember that you want to remove the low end from the melody when you are adding the kick in the 808, because if we go over to the melody EQ right here, you can see the 808 and the kick is going to go all in this low end section right here. And we need to have that cleaned up so it doesn't clash. So in this case, I'm going to go and use a little bit of a lower frequency 808 together with a high punching kick so we can get that perfect combination. Now, so that the mix sounds good, you also need to make sure to put the 808 notes on the correct root note of the melody. If you can't really hear the root note or you don't know how to find it, I have a little bit of a cheat code for you. So what you can actually do is just open up a plugin like Melodyne, and you can put this on the melody or on the bass, and it's pretty much going to give you the exact notes that are being played. So I'm just going to hit this record button and then press play on the bass. And now we can pretty much see that the root notes go from D on the first 2 bars right there, and on the last 2 bars it goes from F to E. So now we know our root notes, and now we know exactly where to place our 808 as well. Now a little bit of a trick we can do with the 808 as well before we actually add the notes in is that you can go over here and you can also boost it up while turning the out knob up a little bit so you can get an even punchier 808 sound. And from here I also go over to the envelope just so we have full control over our 808. I'm gonna turn the attack all the way down, the hold all the way up, and the rest all the way down as well, while cutting self right there so we have full control over it and it's not going to overlast to the next 808 hit. So from here we can start laying in our 808 pattern. So now we have that 808. Again, mess around with the velocity until you have a nice and punchy sound. So this is pretty clean. A lot of space for the 808 since we removed those low frequencies. Right, next we're going to go over to that kick, and I'm just going to layer it with the 808. So I'm literally just copying the 808 pattern over to the kick like this, then hitting Alt and K on my keyboard to route everything to the C5, and then just shortening it and boosting up the velocity all the way up. So if you play it right now, you can really hear it's super punchy because of that kick right there. So if you play it together with the kick right now, you can hear it's super punchy because of that kick right now. So it kind of adds an extra little layer of a hit. And if you want an even bigger impact on some of those 808 and kick hits, I actually also recommend going in for a open hat and just layer it with the same hits. Right, so I've just dragged this open hat right here, and I'm just gonna find a place I think it's gonna sound nicely if we layer it with the kick as well. So something like right here. And right here as well. Both of them will probably work nicely, but I like this one right here. So if you just take a listen to it, you can hear it adds a little bit more of that impact. Right, so from here we're going to go back into our mixer and we're just going to take a little bit of a look at our levels. So as you guys might have already realized, a lot of mixing actually just comes down to leveling. So you just want to make sure to have clean sounds and also level your volume so it sounds nicely all together. So I'm just going to go drum by drum and see what sounds nice. Right, so we have the open hat and the clap first. I kind of like the volume of the clap, to be fair. So I'm just going to go over to the hi-hats next. Just gonna lower them a little bit, turn on the snare. We don't usually have to do too much in this since we have already leveled it while we have made it, but it's just to clean up the sound even more. So maybe the snare is a bit too much, so I've lowered it a little bit. And we're gonna go in with the rim. Yeah, want the rim to be very subtle, so I think I'm gonna lower it. Almost acts as a hi-hat. Yeah, that's way better. Now we're gonna go in with the 808 and kick. As you guys can see, they are actually clipping. But don't worry, it's not a big deal. I actually like the distorted sound and the clipping sound out of the 808, so I'm actually gonna have it clip on purpose, but I will explain later why we can actually do this. So as you can see, I just have it hit right above 0. So it's not, if I were to like bump it up all the way, you can hear it's gonna sound super muddy. It's not really a good sound. So I like it when it's just about 0 right there. Then with the kick, same thing. If you were to bump it up, it's not gonna sound good. So I'm just gonna keep the kick as it is right there, as well as the open hat to finish off, just a little bit down. Right, so the reason why we can actually have these clipping is because on the master channel, we obviously have a soft clipper. Just completely standard settings, nothing really too much going on. You just wanna make sure to have a soft clipper. If you don't know what a soft clipper does, it just pretty much compresses everything under 0 dB. So since we have these ones above right there, but when we go to the master, you can see it does not clip over 0. The reason for this is because of the soft clipper. So if you turn the soft clipper off, you can hear how muddy the low end sounds. But when we turn it on, it has a way cleaner sound. So make sure to have a soft clipper in your master. Just put it on before you even start making the beat. I just honestly have it on my default template. Just have the soft clipper right in there, and it's gonna make your whole beat sound amazing. Now some of you might not like when the 808 and kick clips, so you can actually also go in and add a soft clipper on your kick and 808 channel as well if you want to. So now we have a soft clipper and everything, nothing is really clipping, and it sounds nice. This is again just personal preference, be creative and play around with it. There is no, like I was about to say, there isn't really a one size fits all when it comes to mixing, so you kind of just have to work with it and see what you find nice. Some more stuff you can do on a master that I tend to do sometimes if I feel like I want it to punch a little bit extra hard. So I have this plugin that is called ARTG Mastering Stereo, and sometimes I like to add this before the soft clipper. Make sure it is before the soft clipper over here so you can have your soft clipper at the end. But sometimes if I feel like I need a little bit more gain, I just go over to the input section right here and just boost it up a little bit. It's just gonna give it that extra little bit of punch. But like I said, this is just sometimes. Usually I'm just keeping the soft clipper. So in this case, I like how it sounds without the ARTG master. Alright, so I've just started a little bit of a quick arrangement to show you guys some cool tricks you can do when it comes to the mixing and arrangement. So again, you want to make sure to use this automation clip we have on the low end EQ. So when you have the drums playing, or at least the 808 and the kick, make sure to turn the EQ on. And when you don't have it playing, we can turn it off. So I'm going to turn it off right here for the bridge, and I'm going to turn it back on when the hook would hit right here. Now a cool thing I like to do for this bridge section or even the intro is actually go over to the mixer again. Then we can go over to the full melody and just add a little bit of fruity love filter. From here you can just right click this and hit the simple triangle low pass filter. It's going to give you this underwater type of sound. So you just mess around with the cut as well as the volume so you don't get a really harsh sound out of it. But from here we're just going to create an automation clip out of this as well. And I'm just going to make sure it fades up nicely when the bridge comes in right here. And it's going to fade out when the hook would usually hit. Alright, so let's take a little bit of a listen to how the beat sounds with the mix completely finished. Right, so this is kind of the verse section since we have been listening to a lot of the hook. So here we have the 808, and listen to the mix difference when the kick comes in. You can really hear the punch right there. So that's fire. Here we have the bridge. With the love filter, it really drowns out the sound. Cool little effect you can do with the mixer. Then it just drops back in.